Welcome back. This session is called Working with Columns. If you want to follow along with me, you can download the workbook or simple workbook and look for the worksheet called Columns. In this video, I have a file open called Sample Files, which you can download if you want to work along with me. I'm also on a sheet called Columns. If you take a look at this worksheet, it's a pretty messy looking worksheet. Some of the words in the first column have been cut off because the column isn't wide enough. Some of the numbers over in the last two columns, you can't see them because the column again isn't wide enough. What I want to demonstrate are some different ways that you can change the width of your columns. I also want to talk a little bit about how you hide columns and how you can unhide columns as well. So the first thing I'll be talking about is how you can change the width of a column by using a command button. I want to change the width of column A to a wider width, and the first thing I do using this technique is to select a cell in the column that I want to change the width of. Then on the ribbon towards the right-hand side in the Cells group, I'll click on the Format button. And on the drop-down list, I'll move to Column Width and click. It takes me to a column width window, and I can see the current column width is 12.57. I want to make this a bit wider, so I'll make this 20 characters wide. So I'll just overtype 20 in the window and click OK, and that'll make that column now 20 characters wide. So again, to do this, I just click in a cell in the column. I go to Format, I choose Column Width, and I type in the number that I'm looking for. That's one technique for changing the width of a column. I'm going to undo this to put it back to where it was. So now I'm back to an arrow or column again. There's another way to do the same thing. I think this is a little bit more efficient. So this time I'll be doing a right click. I want to change the width of column A. So I'm going to take my mouse up on the column header. I'll get a little black arrow. I'll right click on the column header A. I'll get a drop down list. And on the drop-down list, I'll move towards this column width and click. And I get the same window that I got before, but again, I just think that's a little bit more efficient. I'll type in 20, and I'll click OK, and I get exactly the same result. That column is now 20 characters wide. And again, to do this, I right-clicked on the column header, I went down to column width, and I typed in whatever number I chose to do. Just cancel on this. I'm going to reverse this out again by going undo. That's the second method. It's a right-click method. You right-click on the column header. Now the third method is one that I really like. I'm going to use my mouse in order to change the width of a column. Now to do this, I'm going to put my mouse up on the column headers on the line between column A and column B. Now understanding that wherever I position my mouse, it's always going to fix the column to the left where I'm positioned. So in this case, I'll be fixing column A. If I have my mouse up on the column header between column D and column E, I'd be fixing column D. So in this case, I'll go between A and B, get double head arrows. I'm going to hold my left mouse button down. A width counter shows up. I'll drag to the right, making it close to 20 characters wide. A little jumpy here. And when I'm done, I'll let go. And I now have this 20 characters wide. Again, that might be a little bit more efficient than the other two methods. They all work perfectly fine. You've got to find the one that you find as far as your preferred way of doing it. And I'll go undo to put it back to where it was. Now the one that I really like a lot, and I use this most of the time when I'm changing column widths, is to automatically fit a column using my mouse. So this time I'll take my mouse up to the column headers, up in the column headers on the line between column A and column B, because it always fixes the column to the left of where I'm positioned. I get the double head arrows, and this time I do a double click. And what it quickly does, it widens the column so it's exactly as wide as necessary to fit the widest entry. Undo this back again. So to do that, up in the column headers, on the line, in this case between A and B, double head arrows and double click, and it quickly widens the column for me. So the widest entry is now visible in the column. I'll go back to undo again. That's my preferred way of doing it. Now the other thing I do an awful lot of is I often want to fix the entire spreadsheet at one time. I want to have all these columns to be exactly as wide as necessary to fit the widest entry. So rather than go here to between A and B and do a double click and go between B and C and do a double click and so on, what I want to do instead is to fix the entire spreadsheet at one time. To do this, I have to first of all select the entire spreadsheet, and to do that, I take my mouse to this button right above row header number 1 and to the left of column header A. When I click, the entire spreadsheet gets selected, except for the first cell. It is part of the selection though. I'll then put my mouse up on any column header. It does not matter which one I go to, as long as I'm on a line up in the column header section. And when I get the double head arrows, I'll double click, and that'll fix the entire spreadsheet for me. So every column in the spreadsheet is now exactly as wide as necessary. I'm just going to undo this one time and go through the whole process again. So I take my mouse to the left of column header A, above row number 1, I click, I take my mouse up on the column headers on any line between column headers, get the double head arrows and double click. And now the entire spreadsheet is now fixed. And I can now see all the information in the spreadsheet. Those are some different techniques that you can use for changing the width of your columns. You can use the format button. You can do a right click. You can also use your mouse to drag. And my preferred way is to do a double click with my mouse up on the column headers. I just finished going through the process of how you can change the width of columns. I do that an awful lot. What I don't do very much in a spreadsheet is change the height of rows. But I want you to see how you can change the height of rows if you decide to do so. Let's say, for example, I want to change the height of row number 4. So this first technique is using a button again. So I'm somewhere in row 4. This is the row that I want to make taller, perhaps. I'll go back up to the ribbon again, click on Format. I'll move down to Row Height and click. And in here it shows me that the height of the window currently is 15 tall, so I'll type in 20 instead and click OK. And now that row is now taller than it was before. That's one technique for doing it. I'm going to undo this. The other way to do it is to take your mouse over on the row headers and put your mouse on the row header between the numbers where you want to make the change. So in this case, I want to change the height of row number 4. So I put my mouse on the dividing line between row 4 and row 5. I get double head arrows. I hold my mouse button down and pull it down a little bit, and that'll make that row taller. So again, all you need to do if you want to make your row taller is to put your mouse on the column headers, get double head arrows on the line between the row where you want to make the change to and the row beneath it, and just drag down with the double head arrows to make that taller. I'm going to go on doing that. So those are two ways of doing rows. I don't do it often, but I wanted you to see how you can change row heights if you need to do so. What I want to demonstrate next is how you go about hiding columns in your spreadsheet. Let's say, for example, that I did not want to show the variance column in the spreadsheet, but I want it here for other purposes in the future, so I want to be able to bring it back when I need to do so. So I want to hide column D. So to hide a column, what you do is you put your mouse on the column that you want to hide, the column header that you want to hide, get that black down arrow and right click, and on the shortcut list, click on Hide, and that column is now hidden in your spreadsheet. You can notice up here it goes B, C, and jumps over to column E. So I want to now bring back column D. So to bring back column D, I have to actually select it. And to select column D, I take my mouse to the column header to the left of the hidden column, in this case column C. I get the black arrow again, and I hold my left mouse button down and I drag across to column E, and I've actually selected column C, column D, and column E. I stay up in the column headers, and I right-click on one of the selected column headers, and on the drop-down list, I click on Unhide to unhide column D. So I want to walk through this one more time. I want to hide column B, so I right-click on column header B. I move down, click on Hide to hide column B. I want to bring column B back, so I select columns A through to C, which includes column E. I right-click on one of my headings that I have selected, and I go to Unhide to unhide it. Now it's a little bit trickier if you hide the first column in your spreadsheet. I'm going to hide column A by going to column header A, get the black arrow, and right-click, and left-click on Hide to hide column A. Now I've got to bring this back, but I have to be able to select column A to do so. And this time what I do is I put my mouse up on column header B, I get the black arrow, I hold my mouse button down, and I drag back to the left. Now it's hard to see it, but I have got column A selected when I did that. I then right-click on column header B and move down to Unhide, and that'll bring column A back for me. So it's easy to hide columns if you need to do so in your spreadsheets. You also might decide to hide rows in your spreadsheets as well. Let's say, for example, for whatever reason, I want to hide the information on community partners. So to hide a row, I take my mouse over to the row header that I want to hide. I get a sideways black arrow, and I right-click, and on the shortcut list again, I click on Hide, and I've now hidden row 7 in my spreadsheet. If I want to hide row 4, I go to row 4 on the header, get the black arrow, and right-click, and left-click again on Hide. I've now hidden row 4. I now want to bring back row 7. So to bring back row 7, I've got to select the row above the hidden row and the row below the hidden row. So I'll go to row header number 6. I get the black arrow and drag down to row header number 8. I've actually selected row 6, 7, and 8. And I right-click on one of the selected headers, and I move to Unhide to bring back row 7 that was hidden before. And then just to repeat the process again, to bring back row 4, which is hidden, I select rows 3 and 5. I right-click on one of the headers. I click on Unhide, and that'll bring back row 4. So this session goes through talking about how you can change the width of columns, the heights of rows, how you can hide columns, how you can hide rows, unhide columns, and unhide rows.